Donald Trump's rallies have long been known for their large, energetic crowds, chanting supporters, and dramatic speeches. However, a recent event in Reading, Pennsylvania, marked a sharp deviation from the usual fanfare. With empty seats dotting the auditorium and members of the audience walking out mid-speech, this was far from the packed and enthusiastic turnout Trump has bragged about. This rally wasn't just about diminishing crowd sizes, but also about the crumbling narrative of unwavering support that Trump likes to project. From awkward pauses to unrelenting rants, and a bizarre mix of self-praise and insults to the crowd, this Pennsylvania event may go down as one of Trump's most embarrassing public appearances. In this video, we will dissect what went wrong during this rally, the audience's reaction, Trump's contradictory claims, and what this signifies for his future campaigns. Trump's rally in Reading was meant to be a highlight for his campaign trail in Pennsylvania, a crucial battleground state. Instead, it turned into a public relations disaster. The most notable part of the evening was not Trump's speech itself, but the empty seats that filled the auditorium and the people who left in droves during his long, winding monologue. The visuals of defeat, empty seats, steal the show. The optics of the event were damning. Cameras panned across rows of empty seats in the back of the auditorium, a glaring contrast to the packed crowds Trump used to draw in his 2016 and 2020 campaigns. Even behind the stage, where crowds are usually strategically placed to create the illusion of enthusiastic supporters, several seats remained conspicuously vacant. To make matters worse, people were seen leaving the venue during Trump's speech, a clear indication that his words were no longer captivating his audience the way they once did. For a man who thrives on the image of mass adoration, the sight of empty seats and dwindling audiences must have been a bitter pill to swallow. The optics were so poor that even Trump's most ardent supporters would find it hard to ignore. In an attempt to downplay the embarrassing turnout, Trump made the claim that his rallies never have an empty seat, even as the visuals from the event told a different story. The speech, a ranting descent into chaos. From the moment Trump took the stage, it became clear that something was off. Rather than delivering a cohesive message, he veered into a series of rants that seemed disjointed, even by his standards. At one point, Trump launched into an attack on the Biden administration's natural gas policies, accusing them of implementing an export ban that was supposedly crushing Pennsylvania. He exaggerated the impact of these policies on the state's economy, despite the fact that his claims were largely unfounded. The audience's tepid response was telling. There were no roaring cheers, no thunderous applause, just a muted reaction that mirrored the half-empty auditorium. When the crowd walked out, perhaps the most shocking moment came when people began to leave mid-speech. As Trump continued his rambling diatribe, discussing everything from fracking to Howard Stern, audience members were visibly heading for the exits. In a particularly awkward moment, Trump even insulted his own audience, suggesting that he didn't have to be there and could have been on a beautiful beach somewhere, as if blaming the crowd for his underwhelming performance. The mass exodus from the rally is a stark contrast to the image Trump likes to project, a leader who commands undying loyalty from his base. The sight of his supporters walking out must have been a blow to his ego, as Trump is notorious for claiming his rallies are always standing-room-only affairs with crowds of hundreds of thousands. Trump versus reality, never an empty seat. One of the most bewildering aspects of the rally was Trump's insistence that his rallies never have empty seats, despite clear visual evidence to the contrary. Standing on the stage, surrounded by pockets of vacant chairs, Trump looked out at the dwindling crowd and declared, "We never have an empty seat. Never have." This is typical of Trump style. When faced with inconvenient truths, he simply creates an alternate reality. Trump's denial of the empty seats and the audience's departure is a microcosm of his broader political strategy. To reject any narrative that doesn't suit him, even when it's plainly obvious. His base has largely accepted this method of disinformation, but at this rally it seemed even they were not convinced. The disconnect between Trump's words and the actual scene in the room was impossible to ignore. The Howard Stern attack, a weak attempt at deflection. At one point, Trump bizarrely shifted his focus to Howard Stern, the radio host whom he has had a contentious relationship with over the years. Trump described Stern as a weak guy and accused him of having low ratings. This attack seemed out of place, especially given the context of the rally. Rather than focusing on policy or the future of his campaign, Trump seemed more interested in settling old personal scores. Even as he trashed Stern, the audience seemed disinterested, further underlining the growing disconnect between Trump and his supporters. For years, Trump's off-the-cuff insults and personal jabs were a source of amusement for his base, but this time they fell flat. The audience wasn't there to hear about Trump's grievances with Stern. They were there for answers on how he would address the issues that matter to them. The women love Trump delusion. Another awkward moment came when Trump made the dubious claim that women are going to like Trump. He added, "I think they like me anyway." This statement seemed tone-deaf, especially considering Trump's historically low approval ratings among women. In a political climate where female voters are increasingly leaning away from Trump and his policies, this remark felt more like wishful thinking than a reflection of reality. Trump's tone toward women has always been controversial, and his belief that he still enjoys widespread support from female voters is increasingly out of touch. At this point in his political career, Trump's base is overwhelmingly male, and his rhetoric is often at odds with the concerns and values of many female voters. The misguided attack on Kamala Harris. In yet another tangent, Trump took aim at Vice President Kamala Harris, falsely claiming that she doesn't do any interviews and isn't smart. This claim was easily disproved, as Harris has been actively involved in numerous interviews and press conferences, particularly in her role in promoting the Biden administration's infrastructure and inflation reduction efforts. Trump's attempt to paint Harris as an incompetent leader fell flat, especially given that his own debate performances and interviews have been widely criticized for their incoherence. His reluctance to participate in more debates has also raised questions about his own political stamina. The attack on Harris was nothing more than a cheap shot, meant to rally his base, but devoid of any real substance. The Starlink lie, more falsehoods about the Biden administration. During his speech, Trump made a claim about Elon Musk's Starlink system, alleging that the Biden administration had confiscated it during a critical moment. This, of course, was another baseless accusation, part of Trump's long-standing strategy of spreading misinformation about the Biden administration's handling of various crises. Trump's penchant for fabricating stories to suit his narrative is nothing new, but in this case, it seemed particularly desperate. As his speech floundered and audience members continued to leave, Trump's lies became more erratic and far-fetched. The crowd's reaction, or lack thereof, indicated that even they were growing tired of his constant disinformation. Hurricane Helen, false claims about the federal response. Perhaps one of the most dangerous parts of Trump's speech was his false claims about the federal government's response to Hurricane Helen. He accused the Biden administration of failing to send aid in a timely manner, suggesting that days passed and no help arrived. This is not only misleading but harmful, as it undermines public trust in emergency response efforts. Trump's willingness to politicize natural disasters for his own gain is nothing new, but this time it felt especially reckless. By spreading lies about the federal response to Hurricane Helen, Trump is potentially putting lives at risk by discouraging people from trusting government relief efforts. His irresponsible rhetoric is part of a larger pattern of disinformation that has plagued his post-presidential career. The rally in Reading, Pennsylvania, was not just a public relations disaster for Donald Trump. It was a window into the slow unraveling of his political influence. With empty seats, audience walkouts, and disjointed rants, this event was a far cry from the massive, energetic rallies that once defined his campaign. Trump's continued reliance on falsehoods, personal attacks, and misinformation only served to further alienate his audience, many of whom walked out mid-speech. As Trump's grip on his base continues to weaken, this rally may signal a turning point in his political career. The disconnect between Trump's version of reality and the actual events unfolding in front of him has never been more apparent. If this rally is any indication, Trump's future on the campaign trail may be filled with more empty seats and disappointed supporters than he is willing to admit.